Look, in this company, we are used to do two things. Number one is to do what we claim we are going to do, to keep the promise. And the second is to see to manage things when they happen. We are looking at that. We are trying to understand what is going to be the percentage.
What if I told you that one of the most expensive cars ever built was declared dead, abandoned by experts, rejected by its own manufacturer, and left with almost no chance of ever driving again? What if I told you that the company responsible for building this engineering masterpiece believed the damage was so serious that repairing it outside their own facilities was nearly impossible? Most people would assume the story ends there. A multi-million-dollar hypercar suffers a devastating crash, insurance companies write it off, and it remains quietly disappear into history. But that is not what happened. Instead, something extraordinary began to unfold behind the scenes. A British YouTuber with a camera, a workshop, and almost unbelievable amount of determination decided to take on a challenge that many experts would not even consider attempting. Standing in front of him was a wrecked Bugatti Chiron Per Sport, a machine worth nearly $6 million and one of only 60 ever produced. The carbon fiber body was shattered. Critical components were damaged. The future of the car looked hopeless. Yet despite every warning, every obstacle, and every reason to walk away, he made a decision that would shock the automotive world. He would rebuild it. What followed was not simply a repair project. It became a battle against impossible odds, a clash between independent engineering and one of the most exclusive car manufacturers on Earth. Along the way, there would be broken parts, unexpected discoveries, public controversy, and moments when the entire project seemed destined to fail. But there was also something else, evidence that determination, creativity, and skill can sometimes achieve what even the biggest companies believe cannot be done. Before this story was over, a wrecked hypercar would become the center of one of the most fascinating automotive rebuilds ever documented. And the entire world would be watching to see whether the impossible could actually become reality. The deeper people looked into the wrecked Bugatti, the more unbelievable the situation became. This was not just another crashed supercar waiting for repairs. The Bugatti Chiron Per Sport represented the absolute peak of automotive engineering. Every bolt, every panel, and every component had been designed with incredible precision. Only 60 examples existed worldwide, making it one of the rarest modern hypercars ever created. Beneath its stunning bodywork sat an enormous quad-turbocharged W16 engine, producing 1,500 horsepower. The car could reach speeds that most drivers would never dare experience. It was a machine built without compromise, created for a small group of extremely wealthy owners who wanted the very best that engineering could offer. That was what made the crash so shocking. When photos of the damaged vehicle first appeared online, enthusiasts around the world immediately began asking the same question. Could this car ever be saved? The answer seemed obvious at first. The front section of the Bugatti had suffered major damage. Carbon fiber panels were destroyed. Structural components appeared compromised. Important cooling systems had been affected. The airbags had deployed. Even experienced mechanics who had spent years working on exotic vehicles looked at the images and shook their heads. Repairing a normal sports car is one thing. Repairing a Bugatti Chiron Per Sport is something entirely different. Every component is expensive. Every repair procedure is specialized. Every mistake can cost thousands or even hundreds of thousands of dollars. The vehicle was so advanced that many people believed only Bugatti itself could properly repair it. Then came the repair estimates, and they stunned everyone. Reports suggested that restoring the vehicle through official channels could cost around $1.7 million or possibly even more. The number sounded almost impossible to believe. For most people, that amount of money could buy multiple luxury homes, private aircraft, or a collection of dream cars. Yet here it represented only the cost of repairs. It quickly became clear why insurance companies were reluctant to move forward. The financial risk was enormous. Eventually, the car received a salvage title and was officially written off. In the eyes of the insurance industry, the Bugatti story was finished. The vehicle that had once represented the pinnacle of automotive perfection was now considered a damaged asset with an uncertain future. But that was where the story became truly fascinating. Instead of disappearing forever, the Chiron Per Sport found itself at the center of growing attention. Car enthusiasts followed every update. Automotive forums exploded with discussion. Some people believed the car should be dismantled for parts. Others argued that it deserved another chance. Yet very few people seriously believed it would ever return to the road in anything close to its original form. The challenge was simply too large. The technology was too advanced. The costs were too high. Then Matt Armstrong entered the picture. For years, Matt had built his reputation by taking on projects that most people considered impossible. His YouTube channel had become famous for rescuing wrecked supercars that everyone else had given up on. He had rebuilt Ferraris, Lamborghinis, McLarens, and other high-performance vehicles that looked destined for the scrapyard. Viewers loved watching him solve problems, overcome setbacks, and bring damaged machines back to life. But even among all those projects, the Bugatti stood apart. This was not just another rebuild. This was the biggest challenge of his career. When Matt first examined the damaged hypercar, he immediately understood the risks. The project would demand enormous amounts of time, money, and technical knowledge. There were countless unknowns hidden beneath the damaged bodywork. Parts availability would become a major issue. Specialized repairs would be required. One mistake could potentially destroy months of work. Yet despite all those dangers, something about the challenge pulled him in. Instead of focusing on why the rebuild could fail, he focused on the possibility that it might succeed. What Matt did not know at that moment was that the hardest part of the project had nothing to do with broken carbon fiber, damaged radiators, or expensive mechanical components. A much larger obstacle was waiting ahead. Soon, he would discover that rebuilding the Bugatti was not simply an engineering challenge. It would become a battle against restrictions, unavailable parts, and decisions made by one of the most powerful automotive companies in the world. The real conflict was only beginning. Just when it seemed that the damaged Bugatti presented enough challenges on its own, the situation became even more complicated. What happened next transformed the project from a difficult rebuild into one of the most controversial automotive stories on the internet. Most people assumed that if you owned a car, no matter how expensive it was, you could simply order replacement parts when something broke. That assumption might be true for ordinary vehicles. It was not true for this Bugatti. As Matt Armstrong and his team began exploring repair options, they discovered a problem that nobody had expected to become so serious. Access to official Bugatti parts was effectively blocked. Suddenly, the challenge was no longer just about repairing damage. It became a battle to find a way forward without the support of the company that built the car in the first place. At the center of the controversy was the vehicle's VIN, or vehicle identification number. Every car in the world has one. It acts like a fingerprint, allowing manufacturers, dealers, and service centers to identify a specific vehicle. According to reports surrounding the rebuild, the Bugatti's VIN had been locked. This meant that obtaining official replacement parts for that particular car became extremely difficult. For a normal vehicle, such a restriction would be frustrating. For a Bugatti Chiron Sport, it was potentially devastating. Many of the parts required for repairs were highly specialized and unavailable anywhere else. Without factory support, even simple repairs could become massive engineering challenges. News of the situation spread quickly throughout the automotive community. Enthusiasts debated the issue across social media platforms, YouTube comment sections, and automotive forums. Some people sided with Bugatti, arguing that the company had valid safety concerns. Others believed that if someone legally owned a vehicle, they should have the right to repair it however they chose. The discussion became larger than one damaged hypercar. It evolved into a debate about ownership, responsibility, and the future of independent repairs. Then the story took another dramatic turn. Comments from Bugatti leadership began attracting attention online. Concerns were raised regarding the complexity of the repairs and the safety implications of rebuilding such an advanced machine outside official facilities. The Chiron was not an ordinary car. It was one of the fastest and most technologically advanced road vehicles ever created. Every component interacted with dozens of other systems. A small mistake during repairs could potentially create serious consequences. From Bugatti's perspective, caution made sense. From Matt Armstrong's perspective, however, the challenge remained the same. A customer-owned vehicle needed repairs, and he believed solutions could be found. As public discussion intensified, many people assumed the rebuild was effectively finished before it had truly begun. Without factory support, how could anyone realistically repair a hypercar of this complexity? The transmission alone represented a massive challenge. Specialized structural components appeared damaged. Electronic systems needed attention. Cooling systems required repairs. Countless parts seemed impossible to source. The list of obstacles continued growing longer with every inspection. But Matt Armstrong had built his career on solving problems that others considered impossible. Instead of seeing closed doors, he started searching for alternatives. If original parts could not be purchased, perhaps they could be recreated. If components could not be sourced directly, perhaps they could be engineered from scratch. Every challenge became a puzzle waiting to be solved. Rather than slowing down, the project gained momentum. Still, one issue stood above all the others. Experts claimed that repairing the Bugatti's transmission and drivetrain would require separating the vehicle into major sections. Some believe that only a handful of facilities in the entire world possess the knowledge and equipment necessary to perform such a procedure safely. For many observers, this seemed like the moment where reality would finally catch up with ambition. Even the most determined builder has limits, or so people thought. What nobody realized was that Matt Armstrong and his team were already preparing to attempt something that many believed should not even be possible. The next stage of the rebuild would involve dismantling one of the most advanced hypercars ever built, exposing damage hidden deep within the vehicle, and confronting engineering challenges that would test every skill they possessed. The true nightmare had only just begun, and the most difficult part of the entire journey was still waiting ahead. The moment Matt Armstrong's team began dismantling the Bugatti, everyone watching realized this project was entering completely new territory. Up until that point, most of the damage had only been visible from the outside. Broken body panels, deployed airbags, crushed carbon fiber, and damaged cooling components were obvious enough. But experienced mechanics know that the real story is often hidden beneath the surface. A crash powerful enough to destroy the front of a hypercar can send shockwaves throughout the entire vehicle. Hidden cracks, bent mounting points, damaged supports, and structural problems can remain invisible until the car is taken apart piece by piece. That reality created an enormous sense of uncertainty. Nobody knew exactly what they would find once the Bugatti's complex layers began coming apart. As the body panels were removed, the scale of the engineering became clear. Every section of the Chiron Purse Sport looked more like aerospace technology than a traditional automobile. Carbon fiber structures connected to advanced cooling systems. Electrical wiring ran through carefully designed channels. Components were packed together with incredible precision. It quickly became obvious why Bugatti technicians undergo specialized training before working on these cars. Every system seemed connected to multiple others. Removing one part often required removing several more first. Nothing about the process was simple. Then came one of the most dramatic moments of the entire rebuild. Attention shifted toward the transmission and drivetrain. During the accident, significant forces had traveled through the vehicle. Reports and inspections suggested that important structural and mechanical components near the rear of the car needed closer examination. Accessing those areas would require something extraordinary. The Bugatti would have to be separated into major sections. For most vehicles, this idea sounds unbelievable. For a Chiron Purse Sport, it sounded almost impossible. The process required patience, planning, and absolute precision. Every electrical connection had to be documented. Coolant lines needed to be disconnected carefully. Fuel systems required attention. Hundreds of details had to be managed correctly before any major separation could occur. One mistake could create additional damage and set the project back significantly. The pressure was enormous. Millions of dollars worth of engineering sat inside the workshop. One wrong move could turn a difficult rebuild into a complete disaster. As work continued, viewers around the world watched with growing fascination. The rebuild was no longer just another YouTube project. It had become a front-row seat to one of the most ambitious mechanical challenges ever attempted by an independent team. Every video generated discussion. Every update sparked new debates. Some people remained convinced the project would eventually fail. Others began believing that Matt might actually succeed. The uncertainty made every stage more exciting. Then the moment arrived. After countless preparations, the team carefully separated Bugatti into its major sections. Seeing the vehicle divided apart was shocking. Even people familiar with high-performance cars rarely witness anything like it. The image looked almost unreal. A multi-million-dollar hypercar, one of the rarest vehicles on Earth, sat in pieces inside a workshop. What many believed could only happen inside specialized factory facilities had just been accomplished by a team determined to find answers for themselves. Yet the most surprising discovery came immediately afterward. Once the vehicle was opened up, the true extent of the damage became visible. Components hidden deep inside the car revealed signs of the crash that nobody had fully understood before. The impact had affected important mounting structures. Mechanical systems showed evidence of stress. Cooling components had suffered damage. Certain parts would require repairs that seemed nearly impossible without factory replacements. Instead of finding reassurance, the team discovered an even bigger challenge than they expected. For a moment, the rebuild appeared more difficult than ever. The damaged Bugatti now looked less like a repair project and more like a giant engineering puzzle scattered across the workshop floor. Every new discovery seemed to create two more problems. Yet something unusual happened. Rather than becoming discouraged, Matt Armstrong and his team grew even more determined. The deeper they went, the more they understood the car. Every component removed revealed new information. Every obstacle presented an opportunity to create a solution. What nobody watching could have predicted was that some of the most important replacement parts would never come from Bugatti at all. Instead, they would be created by skilled fabricators, machine shops, and engineers working outside the factory system. The next chapter of the rebuild would prove that creativity can sometimes be just as valuable as access to original parts, and it would introduce the people who helped turn an impossible project into a realistic possibility. Months of work had led to this moment. Every broken component that had been repaired, every custom-made part that had been fabricated, every late night spent solving impossible problems now pointed toward a single question. Would the Bugatti start? It sounds like a simple question, but for everyone involved in the project, it carried enormous weight. If the engine failed to start, months of progress could instantly feel meaningless. If serious hidden damage remained inside the powertrain, the rebuild could face another major setback. Nobody knew exactly what would happen. That uncertainty filled the workshop with tension, unlike anything seen during the project so far. As the day approached, the atmosphere inside the garage changed. Excitement mixed with nervousness. The Bugatti no longer looked like a wrecked hypercar. It looked like a car again. Major body sections had been repaired. Critical systems had been reassembled. Cooling components were back in place. Electrical connections had been restored. The custom fabricated parts were installed and functioning. Yet appearances can be deceptive. A car can look complete while hiding serious problems underneath. Until the engine started and the systems came alive, nobody could be completely confident. One concern stood above all the others. During the crash and the events that followed, questions have been raised about the condition of the legendary W16 engine. This engine was not only one of the most powerful road car engines ever created, but also one of the most expensive and complicated. If significant internal damage existed, repairing it would be an enormous challenge. Some viewers feared that overheating, impact damage, or hidden mechanical failures might have permanently affected the engine. The team knew there was only one way to find out. Carefully, they began preparing the vehicle. Coolant levels were checked. Fuel systems were inspected. Electrical connections were verified. Sensors were tested. Every step mattered because a single overlooked issue could create problems during startup. The process was slow and methodical. Nobody wanted to rush. Everyone understood what was at stake. Around the workshop, anticipation continued building. After everything they had overcome, this was the moment they had been waiting for. Then the time came. The team climbed into position. Cameras were ready. Viewers around the world would later watch the footage, but in that moment, only silence filled the workshop. Every eye focused on the Bugatti. Every mind raced through possible outcomes. Would there be warning lights? Strange noises? Smoke? Or would the impossible actually happen? The ignition sequence began. For a brief moment, nothing seemed certain. Then suddenly, the giant W16 engine came to life. The reaction was immediate. Months of pressure disappeared in an instant. Relief, excitement, disbelief, and pure joy filled the workshop. The sound of the engine echoed through the building, creating one of the most emotional moments of the entire rebuild. This was not just an engine starting. It was proof that the project had a future. The machine that so many people believed would never run again was alive. For Matt Armstrong and his team, the moment represented far more than mechanical success. It validated every risk they had taken, every criticism they had received, every obstacle they had overcome. The impossible rebuild suddenly felt real. The car was no longer a collection of damaged parts. It was a functioning Bugatti once again. The start became even more dramatic because of the custom exhaust system that had been developed during the rebuild. As the engine settled into operation, the sound filled the workshop with a deep, aggressive tone unlike anything most people had ever heard in person. The noise served as a powerful reminder of what sat before them. A 1,500 horsepower engineering masterpiece that had somehow returned from the brink of destruction. But while the successful startup was a major victory, it was not the end of the story. Starting an engine and driving a fully functioning hypercar are two very different things. Many challenges still remained. Systems needed further testing. Components required verification. Real-world driving would reveal problems that could never be discovered inside a workshop. The Bugatti had won its first battle, but the war was not over yet. What nobody knew at the time was that one small mistake during reassembly would soon threaten months of progress and force Matt Armstrong to make one of the most difficult decisions of the entire project. Just when success seemed within reach, another obstacle appeared, proving once again that rebuilding one of the world's most complicated hypercars was never going to be easy.